let's talk about shark osmoregulation, because they do it differently. But first, kind of regular osmoregulation. The ocean is very salty, and you are considerably less salty than the ocean. Living things are usually less salty than the ocean, because too much salt, and that is not a good thing. However, the ocean really wants your water. Since you are less salty than the ocean wants to take the water from your body. And if you have gills, like a fish where gas exchange happens, it's quite easy for the ocean to steal your water. Water wants to go down the concentration gradient of high water within the organism to lower water within the ocean, which sounds weird that there's less water in the ocean, but that's a little bit how it works, or at least would work if there was no mechanisms to kind of prevent that. If left to its own devices, the ocean would drink any living organism dry because it would take all of the water. So living organisms have developed ways for it to not do that. Now, sharks have a very interesting way of doing that. They have in their blood and body a very, very high concentration of urea, which is the stuff in urine. By maintaining a very high concentration of urea in their blood, they are what is called isoosmotic. That means they have the same approximate concentration of salts in their blood as the seawater outside does. Since there's the same concentration on either side of the barrier being skin, then the water just kind of stays. It doesn't all rush out into the ocean because it wants to be at a lower concentration, it just kind of hangs out in balance. Now, other fish do other ways of osmoregulation. It's mainly just sharks that osmoregulate due to this very high urea concentration. Now, this does have some interesting side effects occasionally. This is a Greenland shark, and Greenland sharks are commonly eaten in a lot of northern countries. However, due to the high levels of urea in the Greenland shark specifically, breaking down into ammonia, if not properly processed, the meat of the Greenland shark is quite toxic to eat. You have to process it fully and properly before you eat it, or else the urea breaking down into ammonia can cause a whole lot of health issues. Not good. Now, the bull shark, a specific species of shark, that was so hard to say, it took me like 4 tries. It is what is called euryhaline, so it can live in both salt and fresh water, and it has to osmoregulate a little bit differently than everything else. In saltwater, they osmoregulate the same as every other species of shark with very high levels of urea, but if they move into freshwater, suddenly they are in a much less salty environment, and all the water is trying to enter the shark tissues because it wants to go to the lower salt concentration caused by the excess urea. Now, the shark really does not want that because too much water will cause its cells to explode, and we do not want our cells to explode, so they have to get rid of all of that excess urea very, very fast in very high levels, so they produce a lot of very dilute urine. Producing high levels of very dilute urine works to both flush the excess urea out of their cells and tissues, as well as flush the excess water that has gone into the system, because again, too much water, cells explode. So eventually it will get rid of all of that excess urea and all of that excess water and will be better adapted to the freshwater environment. And when it goes back into the saltwater, it will do the opposite, produce a lot of urea to keep in store in its blood and tissues. So sharks are very good at osmoregulation and do it in a very, very interesting way.